Once upon a time, there was an artist named Pat who lived in a big city. She married, had a child, and did all the things you usually do in any ordinary life. Eventually, her marriage drifted and they separated, and her child grew up and moved out. Time passed as it does, and she retired. Thinking practically, Pat took some money she had and bought a small house far, far outside the city, halfway to somewhere. It was all she could afford, and she couldn't afford the city at all anymore, so she packed up her car and, in a series of several trips, moved north. Here, in her new home, Pat did art. She joined the clubs that involved art and got a dog named Penny who barked whenever anyone came near. She also found that living in the country was actually quite nice. One day, Pat noticed a dog on the other side of the road. It was posing, and she realized it was trying to attract Penny's attention. Penny, who was spayed and not interested at all, thank you very much, didn't even bother barking. The visiting gentleman eventually got the message and walked off. It was only then that Pat realized it had actually been a wolf. The small plot of land Pat's house sat on tended to get very damp in the spring. It showed off footprints very clearly. More than a few times Pat saw bear prints. Once she saw a print that looked like it belonged to a very large cat, possibly even a lynx. She never saw the lynx or the bear, but you don't have to see something to picture them there. Then there were the spring peepers. A spring peeper is a very young frog. They would spend their tadpole time in a big puddle at the rear of the property. Then they'd climb out onto the land and hop off. For a while they would hang around the puddle, beep, beep, beeping. It was noisy, but it didn't last long, and it was life, so Pat liked it. Every spring the town council sprayed something on the gravel road out in front of Pat's house to keep the dust down. One year they sprayed something different. That year there were no spring peepers. Pat got mad. She found out when the next town council meeting was being held, and she let them have it. Then she went home. The council decided that if the peepers were affected, the wells people got their drinking water might be too. They never used that stuff again. In time, the peepers came back. It was never quite the same, but they did come back. Pat got older and other stuff happened. But while she owned that house with its little plot of land, it was always a safe place for peepers, for romantic wolves, for dogs that napped in the shade, for bears that cut across the land on the way to somewhere else, and maybe even a lynx. And that is not a bad thing.